have a question. What do the following originators and great leaders have in common? Craig Strent, Josh Metal, Ryan Grant, Tyler Osby, and Caleb LeGrand. The answer is they're all members of the Leadership 360 family. And they've all graduated from the L360 Signature Program, a one-year coaching program that includes an 8-day business and life planning retreat in Costa Rica and a 4-day implementation retreat in Malibu, along with one-on-one and group coaching for an entire year. Gang, this is the only one-on-one coaching that I do. So if you want to have an opportunity to work with me, this would be about how you go about doing that. There's nothing like it, I can assure you of that. We've been perfecting and evolving this for over a decade now. The program is exclusive to only 12 people annually. That's it. And there are 3 of us as coaches, myself, Scott, and Julie, that work intimately with our clients for a 1-year period of time. Apply now so we can get to know each other a little bit and assess whether there's a mutual fit. And the way that you do that is you go to leadership360now.com. Once again, leadership360now.com, or you can click on the link in the show notes of this episode. That's leadership360now.com. And for more information, if you want to see what the current group is experiencing, we've asked them to record some testimonials. They're also in the show notes of this episode as well. I hope that you enjoy today's episode of the 360 Experience. Well, welcome everyone to the 360 Experience. I am your host, Tim Braheem, and today I am excited, as I usually am with most of my guests, but boy, this one's a really special one for me. He's an old friend, an old mentor, somebody who's had an enormous impact on my life, David Allen. David Allen, the author of the many times over New York Times bestselling book, Getting Things Done, The Art of Stress-Free Time Management. He is the author of the GTD strategy. Back in the day, 20 years ago, Forbes magazine listed David Allen as one of the top 5 executive coaches in the world. He's had such an enormous impact on so many people's lives, helping them get free from mind clutter, helping them get organized, helping them create a system for efficiently being able to migrate their business and personal life by being organized and really knowing what is of priority to get done. And today, he and I are going to spend a little bit of time catching up, kind of taking a little bit of a stroll through memory lane, and the two of us together will be sharing with you some wisdom, hopefully, that will be really helpful for you as it relates to you being able to take more control of your day, manage your time and tasks successfully. And please enjoy my conversation with no one other than David Allen. Wow, David, so nice to see you. It's been a long time. I bet it's been, probably closing in on 16, 17 years since I last saw you. And I guess I want to just start by saying thank you. I'm sure you get this a lot from people that, maybe you haven't seen in a long time that were pupils of yours and that you coached, but you've made not only a huge impact on my life, because I still practice most of the things that you taught me, but additionally, I don't think you probably realize this, but you made a huge impact on a lot of other people's lives indirectly as a result, because as a business and life coach and somebody that's been doing it for 12 years now, and formally with Lone Toolbox back in the day when I adopted your GTD methodology and then taught it. And I also incorporated some Jason Womack stuff in there. A lot of people have been exposed to your teaching and have benefited from it. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
You're quite welcome. And I always love to hear those kind of stories. As I say, I never know really what sticks out there for people. So it's always delightful to hear when it does,
Well, I want to,
and the impact. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to unpack some of the things that have stuck for me, and then also maybe have you uncover some things that I've forgotten about. I suppose that after 20 years since you were my coach, it's been 21 years, I think, to be exact. I think it was 2001. I'm sure that there are some things that I've forgotten, but let's first just start with like where you're at in your life right now. Like, I know you were living in SoCal and Ojai, and then you moved to Santa Barbara, and then I haven't seen you in years, and now you're living in another place that's pretty cool. Tell us about that.
Amsterdam, or about eight plus years ago, Catherine and I moved, and we just actually, frankly, we wanted to get out of the U.S. not that we didn't like the U.S., but uh, we were. My work was becoming more virtual and more global, and my wife Catherine and I said we saw people a little more sedentary than us, and we said, you know, while we're still active and healthy, no kids, and my work is becoming more virtual. How about let's throw the dart and have another life adventure,
Yeah.
and so uh, and it could have been anywhere as long as I was near a good airport. So we thought Stockholm, Copenhagen, London, Kyoto. Kyoto, we're big Japanophiles, but that's just too far away from everywhere. So we said, okay, Europe. And so we didn't know how soon we were going to go. We moved to Santa Barbara simply because, we had a God's Little Acre house on the east end of Ojai. And, it was kind of getting to the place where we really needed to renovate the whole thing, but we didn't really, we'd built our own little jewel box office in Ojai. So we didn't really have the funds to do it like we really would want to do it. So we said, well, let's just see. And the market was crap. And we said, yeah, let's just put a price on this thing and see if it'd have to be an emotional buy, because we just invested so much in outdoor fireplace and garden and all kinds of cool stuff. We said maybe it'll be a year or two. I don't know if somebody gives us this price, and then we'll figure out something to do. And sure enough, 2 weeks later, somebody walked on and said, "This is exactly what I want." Gave us exactly what we asked, what we were asking. We said, "Well, I guess that's a sign." And so we weren't ready to, unhook from the States yet, business wise or whatever. So we said, and also it was getting too hot. Catherine, her is of Scottish origin. Her parents were Scottish. And so it was just getting too hot in Ohio. And she said, and not only that, we had to travel 45 minutes to go get the culture in Santa Barbara, because there's so many cool things at UCSB that were going on there. So we said, well, come on, let's unhook and get trainer wheels for Europe by going to Santa Barbara. So we rented a nice little townhouse. We could walk to town, and we actually got Dutch bikes while we were there. And so we kind of played a little bit. As I said, we got trainer wheels, for Europe. And then, we could have gone anywhere that again had a good airport. And it turns out Amsterdam was just the kind of perfect storm or perfect mix of things we wanted. It was enough of a foreign country to be an adventure, but everybody here speaks English. So, so that was no issue. And it's about as far north as we wanted to be in terms of darkness and winter, and actually the climate here is really lovely. We really like it. We like it a lot. So we love the city. We didn't know how long we were going to stay. We thought, well, maybe we'd be there for a little while and then move around and see that. But the hoops you have to jump through if you want to get residency somewhere, it's takes a while, and there's a lot of stuff to go through if you're going to stay anywhere longer than 3 months. So we jumped through all those hoops, and then not only were we in love with Amsterdam to begin with, because it was such a beautiful city and great culture. We love the Dutch. We love the Dutch history. And so we said, okay, let's stick around. So we intend to stay. So we finally, we rented 3 different places, sort of explored different parts of the city. And we finally said, it'll be a lot cheaper to buy than rent. And so, because, mortgages were down to like 1.2% or something. So, cash was free, in a way. So he said, what the heck? We bought an apartment that was been a year, essentially creating a 4-season hotel-esque apartment. We said, look, this might be the last place we live. I'll be 77 in a couple of months. Catherine's 63. We said, it might be the last place, but we don't want to have the, oh shit, we should have, if once we did the renovation of it. So we imported a sauna from Canada that we have in the bathroom. We have Toto toilets. We have total ceramic tile, underfloor heating, all that good stuff. So we've had a huge project to do that. And so we love it. It's great.
Well, congratulations. There's a lot to unpack even in just what you shared there, a little bit about bringing me up to speed on where you're at in your life. I mean, everything from the ability for one to have a virtual business nowadays to also the I guess the realization that like life is meant to be lived and you don't want to live it with regrets, right? Like, I mean, if you have certain things that you're being pulled towards, and that's actually quite an interesting additional element to it, was that you thought it'd probably take a couple of years to sell the house, but it was almost like, Joseph Campbell's, call to adventure that you guys stepped into.
Yeah.
And it was like the universe was saying, or God was saying, okay, well, thank you finally for heeding the call, and let's now meet you there and let's go. So let's I want to give everyone just a quick little brief history, take them down through memory lane as it relates to my relationship with you, and then I want to dive into the GTD methodology and have you do some teaching in this conversation. So I'll never forget. I tell this story quite frequently about our time together. So the orientation for everyone listening is that David used to coach people privately, and what his coaching would look like is he would come to your office for 2 straight days. So my recollection is he was at my office bright and early at about 8 a.m. on a Monday, and he was there till 6 o'clock, and then again at 8 a.m. on Tuesday, and there till 6 o'clock. And at the end of that, that's the coaching. But it's super saturated and deeply profound and impactful. And one of the things that I recall most vividly was that first day was all about cleaning out the clutter, everything from the file drawers in my office to my inbox and my email to my voicemails to anything, most importantly, that was in my head. I mean, I remember you giving me like a stack of papers and saying, all right, I'm going to give you some thought prompters, and I want you to write down everything you need to do in your life associated with like medical or, vacations or whatever. And on each separate piece of paper, I would write all this stuff down. The next day was about processing that information into a system, which is the GTD methodology. But I remember this elegant moment, man, where you and I, at the end of the second day, you said, let's go hit a bucket of golf balls. And we went to the driving range real close by, and you were on the mat in front of me, and I was behind you. And I just started laughing hysterically. And you turned around and you said, what? And I go, I can't think of anything. Like my mind, I had never had that experience before of my mind being completely empty of thought, because everything that I had to do or had in my mind had been taken out of it and processed into the system. And I knew it was there in my dashboard. And it was the most liberating, freeing feeling, man, like a feeling of sovereignty, like I had never experienced before. And, from there, just started working the system feverishly. I mean, I may not be the smartest guy in the world, but I can implement pretty well. So you you showed me the path, and I ran down it, and it's been hugely impactful. So just setting that orientation up. Now let me just ask you to share with everybody, like, what is, in your definition, the GTD methodology? Like, if you could give us a start there at 50,000 feet.
Sure. Well, it's a set of best practices that I uncovered and recognized over several years about how do you get rid of the distractions in your mind. I came to be very associated and loved the idea of clear space in martial arts and meditation practices or whatever. That, if you're distracted by a bunch of stuff, it doesn't allow your brain sort of the real estate or the space to think about more creative, strategic, or inspirational stuff. So as my life got more complex, I started to uncover techniques for myself that would allow me to stay clear. And I didn't wake up one morning with GTD, the Getting Things Done methodology. I mean, that would have been, I guess, nice, but didn't happen that way. It was piece by piece, a string of epiphanettes, if you will. About, oh, that one works. Oh, that one works. And so I built my own system. And then in my own consulting practices, I started my own little consulting business. I started to use those techniques with my clients so that they could maybe experience what I experienced, which is more clarity, more grounded, more openness in my head to think about more strategic things. And it turned out it worked for them too. Exactly. So those same techniques of capturing and clarifying what you captured and organizing the results in some external brain that you trust, which you review and engage with regularly, so that your mind can then let go and be much more free, as you say, to think about either nothing, which is a nice place, or whatever it is you want to think about without having any of that stuff impinging on your head with a little squirrel cage, little rabbit running around in your head about all that stuff that's not making any progress on it. All it's doing is increasing what I now refer to as the ambient anxiety that most people are addicted to. They're willing to be waked up at 3 o'clock in the morning with, oh, should have, or rethinking something. If they maybe they sort of have a to-do list, but most to-do lists are incomplete lists of still unclear things. So most people's to-do lists create as much stress as they relieved, simply because they're reminding them of decisions they haven't made, and thinking they haven't finished about whatever it is they wrote down. So I just discovered what's the process of finishing your thinking about something and then organizing it appropriately. Not that it's finished, but that you are now appropriately engaged with it. Like, I doubt, Tim, if you're thinking right now about where you need to be 3 weeks from Monday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Why? You've probably captured that somewhere in a system that you trust that you'll see at the right time. So anybody who manages the calendar and does anything like that is already demonstrating this methodology. Like, it's something I need to be aware of. I don't need to be aware of it right now. I need to be aware of it at a certain time, and I need to make sure it's placed somewhere, and I have the behavior to look at it at the right time. So it gets a lot more subtle, as you can imagine. Very few people have anything like a project list, and a list of all the projects and things that they need to finish. Anything going to take more than 2 steps to finish. Very few, and most professionals anyway, have somewhere between 30 and 100 of those, given personal as well as professional. And most people don't even have a clue what all that stuff is. So the methodology was about truly externalizing all that. You capture what's got someone's attention, my attention. You then go through a process of thinking, wait a minute, what does that thing mean to me? Is that trash? Is that reference material? Is that, or, oh, that's something I need to move on. Well, what would moving look like? So then determining what's the very next action I would need to take on this. And if one action won't finish it, what's the outcome that I'm committed to complete about that? And so, as simple as that sounds, I spent thousands of hours with executives like yourself, some of the best and brightest people on the planet, actually walking them through that process. So, that was it. And then having them customize their own systematic way to keep track of all that stuff in the right places. So my methodology doesn't advocate any one particular kind of tool. You need some tools. You need stuff to be able to park this stuff, but you can write it on your hand. You can use paper-based systems. You could use digital. There are hundreds of digital list manager tools out there now, sort of based on my methodology, even. And so that's the simplicity of the process. You just then need to make sure that it's kept current. See, if your brain will know whether the system is better than it is. If the system is not better than your brain cannot let go.
Yeah.
It won't trust it. It won't trust the system. It'll feel like it's too much work to write it down because I've still got a bunch of stuff up here, but that's not complete. And what I'm looking at right there, oh, damn, it's just a lot easier to not engage with the process.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people, I want to, gosh, there's so many things I want to ask you. So, okay. So first of all, I'm excited to be with you here, David. So I want to summarize that real quick and then there's a question embedded in my summary. So the way most people, as I see it, are going through their day is they're trying to use their brain as an organizing tool for all that they need to do. And maybe they've got a calendar and maybe they've got their notes feature on their iPhone or whatever, and they'll take a note, or maybe they'll shoot themselves an email, or maybe they'll leave themselves a voicemail. And there's all these different ways that people try to figure out how they can not forget and not have to try to remember all these important things to do. But that really doesn't work, right? I want you to drill down a little bit deeper, if you could, on the subject matter of a dashboard and why it's super important to have it organized so the brain can let go. Because I think the brain's always operating off of fear, right? We don't know what we're not remembering, and we know we're not remembering things, and we have that oh shit moment where it's like, oh man, I forgot to do that, and that propagates more fear. So can you speak a little bit more granularly to maybe walk us through an example of a system of getting it out of your head into a system and why that's important?
Well, I got a couple of years, you know. No, well, I mean, no, I don't mean to be facetious about it, but if it takes, well, here's an example. Your mom's birthday just showed up in your mind. Oh my God, mom's having a birthday next month or whatever. And so you go, oh, we should, we should do something about mom's birthday. So there's something on their mind, right? Mom's birthday. Now, some people, if they're already graduated to the sort of first level, elementary level of this, will say, oh, let me put mom's birthday on my to-do list. So you go to the to-do list and you write mom. Well, great, you probably had one, but what does that mean? Oh, well, she's got a birthday coming. What are you going to do about mom's birthday? Oh God, I don't know. So just looking at mom on a list is reminding you there are decisions you haven't made and thinking you haven't finished about what to do with this commitment that you've got. So that's the clarify step. So the first thing is capture it. So at least write down mom's birthday or mom or whatever. Then step two would be, okay, what do you need to do about mom's birthday? You know, oh, I'll call my sister and see what she thinks we should do about mom's birthday. Ah, so now you have a specific next action to take about this thing. You're starting to clarify what was on your mind. Okay, call sister. Now, by the way, calling your sister is not going to finish this. Oh no, we need to make sure that we celebrate mom's birthday somehow. Ah, so you have a project as well, right? Celebrate mom's birthday. Great. So now we have two things to keep track of: the next step on this thing and the final outcome. That we can mark off as done whenever we get there, right? And then you say, okay, now you've clarified this thing. Now I need to organize step three. Are you going to call your sister right now? Nah, I'm busy with some other stuff, but I'll get to it when I can get to it. Great. So where are you going to park a reminder to call your sister when you have time? Ah, how about it? If you're like me, you'd have a list called calls to make. So when I have time around what's going on my calendar, I just look at my other actions that I need to take as soon as I can do them. And I would call my sister about mom's birthday. Great. And where you're going to keep track, by the way, of the project itself. The project is to celebrate mom's birthday. How about a list called projects, which is what I have. And I usually coach people to set that up. Okay, celebrate mom's birthday. So now I have two things that I had to think about and had to decide about. By the way, no software is going to make those decisions for me. Sorry. I don't care how good AI gets. It ain't going to tell you what to do about mom's birthday. Might give you suggestions. It might tell you what you've done for the last 12 birthdays so that you have ideas. It's decision support, but it's not going to make the decision for you. So once you've then clarified, here's the next step, here's the outcome, then I need to park those somewhere. So now I've got a call parked on my calls list. I have a project on my project list. My calls list, I'm going to see probably daily if I have any discretionary time to see all the calls I need to make and whether calling SIP is, the appropriate thing to do. And my project list, I don't need to see every hour, every day, but at least once a week, I need to come back, as you know, the weekly review. Once a week, you need to sort of bring up the rear guard. Let me go through all the projects. Oh, mom's birthday. How are we doing on that? Have I heard back from my sister yet? Yeah. So those become the triggers that I need to be reminded of about this stuff. And if I trust, I will see both my calls list at the right time and my project list at the right time. Then my brain goes, I no longer now need to keep track of it in this crappy office called my mind. And it's a crappy office. As you said, most people are trying to run their life from their head. And your brain did not evolve to do that. So sidebar on that, I'll come back to that. But the process then, once I have those lists, I look at them at the right time, reflect on them in some conscious way so that I don't ignore those things that are on the list. Then I'm appropriately engaged. So a lot of GTD is not about working harder. Unfortunately, we use the word productivity, but people have a lot of baggage around that where they think, oh, work longer, work harder, sweat more. No, productive just means produce whatever you want to produce. If you go to a party to boogie and don't boogie, it was an unproductive party. You and your wife, if you're going on a vacation, if you go on the vacation to relax and have fun and you don't relax or have fun, that's an unproductive vacation. So productivity, yeah. So in order to be productive, you need outcome and action clarification. You need to then make sure that you've got appropriate reminders of the right stuff at the right time, so that you feel appropriately engaged with your life and your work.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah.
And in a way, it's that simple, but in a way, that's pretty profound. Anybody who actually does that.
It's so interesting that you bring up the subject matter of mom's birthday. My mom's turning 80 in December. I had this thought earlier this summer. I had this thought when I was down in Costa Rica of, wow, my mom's 80th birthday is in December, and we need to plan something. Now, to your point, if I just leave it there and it's trying to be remembered in my mind, it's going to create a lot of stress and anxiety for me because I'm surely going to forget and then have the anxiety. And I may greatly underestimate, to your point, what the complexity is of that thought, right? Because there's layers to it. There's steps of things that need to take place. So I'm now using Todoist. I went from Outlook, tasks, which you introduced me to and customized with me. And then you suggested OmniFocus, which I used for a while. Now I'm using Todoist, but what I do, and I think that this is in my experience, David, of trying to help people and adopting GTD. It's like, I think the biggest hurdle for people is what you just stated, which is going to it regularly, like forming a new habit of, I don't rely on my brain. I rely on this system that I have created and customized for myself. And that new habit is something that I'd like you to speak to in a moment, in terms of how you get people into the habit of doing the weekly review, of asking themselves the question, what is it? Oh, it's my mom's birthday. Okay, where does it belong? Okay, it belongs in a project, which I go into Todoist and I just type mom's birthday, and then maybe a couple of sub projects or subtasks. Contact a private chef, because I wanted to have a private chef for dinner. Contact my sister and my niece and my son and make sure that they can attend, set the date, right? So now at least I have some semblance of what I need to do. But if it just sits there and I don't look at it, it's actually an exercise in futility, right? So how do you get people to make that transitionary shift into using the system? And do you find that to be challenging?
I don't know. Come on, I've been doing this for 40 years, Tim. And if I had the silver bullet or this magic pill that would get people to do that regularly, I'd probably make a lot more money than I'm making. But let me refer you back to the old model of the 4 stages of building a new habit. First of all, there's unconscious incompetence. I don't know that I don't know what I don't know about what I don't know about, but something's wrong.
Okay.
Think off. Right. So I don't know what, like you mentioned, like people have theirs, but they don't know what's up. They don't know what's wrong with this, but it's not working. So there's an unconscious incompetence. You don't know what you don't know. Then there's the next stage, which is your conscious incompetence. Oh, okay, now I kind of know what I should do. I just not doing it. Right. Stage. Yeah. Let me take a really stupid example. Catherine said, "See, David, we've got a brand new French handmade stove in our new apartment, and I got a little time. I love to cook, so I've learned some new stuff. David, you should make a risotto. Risotto. Oh my God, I've eaten it, but I have no idea what you have to do to make a risotto. So I was unconsciously incompetent. I didn't know what I didn't know about making a risotto. It's like, what? Risotto? Me make it? I don't got what? Next stage would be, okay, David, here's the recipe. Ah, look at that. Now, if I was going to make a risotto, I have the plan. I have the template about how to make a risotto. Great. I just never done it before. So I'm conscious that I'm incompetent about this. Right. I'm conscious of what I'm incompetent about. In other words, okay, here's how you do that thing. I'm not good at it. I mean, I've never even did it before. Right. So then I start making a risotto and it works. Like, oh, now I'm at stage 3, which is conscious competence. Okay, now I know how to make a risotto. I don't even need to look at the recipe again. But I need to remind myself. I need to glance at the recipe now that I'm working it. So I'm consciously competent, but only with the tools and the help. Stage 4, I don't need to think about that. I just go make risotto. And what else are we having dinner tonight, sweetie? And because it's just on automatic. Now that's unconscious. It's on automatic. I don't have to make myself do a weekly review. I just do them. I don't have to. I don't have to think about. Oh, gee, David, you should do the GTD process. Well, I sometimes need to remind myself what I teach. Gee, David, what's your next step about these 2 train tickets I just printed out? So I still have to go through the thought process. I don't get rid of that. I still have to do that. I just know what to do, and it's sitting there. It's in my in basket, so I know I'm going to get to it and empty the in basket before the night's over. So anyway, I don't know if that helps
It
at all
does.
just define what this thing is, but the unconscious competence is where these behaviors are on automatic, and that could take you years.
It could take you years, or you could just trust. I mean, like, I think my experience was it didn't take me years. It took me actually very little time, because I think because of the time we spent together, and then I trusted the system, right? I think what you said earlier is so incredibly important, which is that your brain needs to know that the system is smarter than it. And in order for it to know that, you need to have a system that's super reliable.
Yeah.
And
No,
I think
you were one of the exceptions, Tim. You were so quick because you got the value of it immediately, and you automatically started having a project list and having people say, you walk in. I remember, people would walk into you, and you'd say, well, where's your list of projects? And they kind of freak out. And so you were already modeling for them. And of course, if you model it, you have to do it, and so you were a very quick study, Tim, but that's somewhat exceptional over the years.
so. Thank you for that. I think the one thing that I want to further explore with you is, as it relates to what you just described, is the subject matter of people. How would I articulate this? So you have all of these things that you need to do, like you got your train tickets, right? So you have next actions associated with those train tickets, I suppose. We think, I think that most people think about a topic like mom's birthday, and that's it, not the subcategories of what needs to happen. And then they keep them in their head. And then when they keep them in their head, there's only so much bandwidth for that, right? And then what's the effect of that? Like, I want to make sure everybody understands why this is so critically important. Of course, it's critically important because if you free up bandwidth, you have more room for creativity. And I'll give you a great example of that. When we take people down to Costa Rica for 8 days on retreat, we intentionally, David, eliminate as many of the distractions as we possibly can. So the itinerary is totally set from the time you wake up until the time you go to bed. There's not a lot of room for checking your phone. We immerse you in nature on a pretty consistent basis. We start off with meditation and yoga. And what ends up happening as a byproduct of that is the mind starts to slow down because there's not as much to worry about. And then all of a sudden, the evocation of creativity is the result. Like, people are like, I don't know, man, I'm coming up with some brilliant ideas right now. I don't know where these are coming from. Well, that's because the mind clutter has really mellowed out. Now, the inverse of that is what? That's what I'd like you to talk about, because I really want everybody to get what they are sacrificing by not having a system of organizing their thoughts, and what the effect is that they're not even in some cases aware of. You talk about unconscious incompetence. Like, I don't think a lot of people are even aware of the level of stress and anxiety and all of that that's transpiring. So talk about that if you could, please.
Well, as you know, the old saying, the last thing a fish notices is water. The last thing most people notice is the ambient anxiety they're living in. So it's their addiction to that prevents them from doing what you've done or implementing any of this. And I say addiction, it means you're not going to go shoot up stress, but you're willing to tolerate that. You're willing to tolerate that ambient anxiety, that squirrel that runs around in your mind and wakes you up at 3 o'clock in the morning about stuff you didn't do or forgot or whatever. And that's just, uncomfortable. I came up with the principle years ago that your head's for having ideas, but not for holding them. And in the last decade, all kinds of cognitive scientists have now proven that. As a matter of fact, your brain did not evolve to remember, remind, prioritize, and manage relationships between more than guess how many things they've proven now. 4. That's it. As soon as you have more than four things you're trying to keep track of in that crappy place called your head, then you're going to lose cognitive ability. You're going to be suboptimal in your ability to be able to focus, and you're going to tend to be driven by latest and loudest. Period. Don't shoot the messenger, guys. That's now scientific data. You can just go read all the books in cognitive science, and the research has been done lately about that. So, so you're right. It is real estate, and you only have a limited amount of real estate that your brain can manage. And that's why, a good friend of mine and another expert in this whole area, researcher, psychiatrist, psychologist, professor in the University of Brussels, Theo Campanoli is a great guy, and he's curated 650 studies of cognitive science in the last decade or so. And his whole thing is the brain needs to rest. You need to stop. You need to give yourself clear space to let the archive part of your brain, sort of curate essentially all the complexity that we all deal with on a daily basis. Most people don't realize how many commitments they have, how many things they have to think about, how many inputs that they need to make decisions about. It's a lot more than most people realize. And so, optimizing the ability for your brain to be creative, to be strategic, to be present, to be innovative, to be any of those cool things which your brain is actually good at doing, you're going to lose the ability and the space to be able to do that. And there's limited space, not an infinite amount of space in there. So you want to be able to free it up, in order to be able to be more creative or just present. I coach the head of the World Bank, and his presenting issue was, David, when I go home from the bank on the weekend with my young kids, I don't want to take the bank with me. So, yeah, no kidding. So a whole lot of that is about, just being able to then create that freedom. And again, I didn't make this up. Don't shoot the messenger. This is just the truth. So how much, and I really wasn't a coach like you're a coach, and we didn't even use the word coaching back then, which is a consulting process, and it was basically just help people implement the model. How much you stuck with the model, whether you took to the model or whatever, that wasn't my issue. I just need to go on to the next person that wanted to know what the model was and what it would look like to implement it. So I was not a hands-on over a long period. I've done that a few times, where clients just wanted me for a whole year to hand hold them, to walk them through the process so they really install this as a habit. But that really wasn't my gig. My gig was to define the game. So if you read my book, Getting Things Done, especially the new edition, it's just the manual about this. How much people decide to do what's in the manual, kind of beats me. But I figured that was a major milestone in my life, and it took me 20 years, Tim, to figure out what I'd figured out, and that it was unique and nobody else seemed to have done it. So I got some good coaching. David, you ought to write the book. Okay, so 2001, first edition of Getting Things Done was published. I had no idea how much uptake there'd be out there for it. I just said, I need to get it out of my head and get this manual out there about what this is, in case I get run over by a bus. Somebody will pick up the book and figure it out.
How many copies of that book have been sold now?
A couple of million.
Congratulations. That's fantastic. I think I put you on the New York Times bestseller list a few times. What would it be like to have an ally, a partner, somebody who knew you well, who could help you see clearly the pathway to your success in your business and your life? How to develop relationships with referral partners, how to cultivate borrowers from your past client database, and how to create new opportunities in this down market. The Performance Accelerator private one-on-one coaching program is that program. It pairs you with a certified, highly skilled coach who will help you in designing the future that you want and need. Go to www.mortgagecoachingnow.com and click on Get a Coach to register for your free exploratory session. Or you can click on the link in the description to this podcast. Yeah. So, okay. So then the other word that always comes forward for me as it relates to this is fear. You talk about I'm really glad that you talked about a little bit about neuroscience there, which is a topic that I've become quite familiar with. I've become a big fan of a guy named Dr. Joe Dispenza. Do you know who he is?
No, I don't.
So he's, I won't go down that rabbit hole, but he's somebody worth you checking out. And he's one of those people that has kind of proven some of the things that you've talked about. And one of the things that he talks about is that we, very physiologically become addicted to the hormones of stress. Okay. So it may seem counterintuitive that, like, why would we want to create stressful situations for ourselves? Well, there's a chemical addiction that transpires, right? When you're operating under the hormones of stress, you have, norepinephrine, endopinephrine, adrenaline, cortisol that are being secreted from your pituitary gland into your body, and you feel that fight or flight rush. And I think a lot of people subconsciously become addicted to that. And what we're talking about is something that's very, very opposite, which is to create a system that allows your brain to relax, allows the thoughts to subside, allows creativity to be evoked. But fear is a big factor. I mean, you talked about latest and loudest. Can you speak a little bit about your experiences of how people are addicted to fear or have fear-based thoughts that get in the way of them being able to manage their time and tasks effectively?
I'm not sure I have a really good answer to that. What pops to mind is just FOMO, the fear of missing out. You know, what am I? Gee, if I don't do all this stuff, what am I going to miss? Am I going to miss a promotion? Am I going to miss the sale? Am I going to miss the new client? Am I going to miss the whatever? And so that it perhaps ties to the greatest human addiction, which I learned from my spiritual coach JR years ago, which is control. Everybody wants to control things. And so, the big people are killing themselves and each other, as you and I are speaking right now, just to try to either achieve or maintain a sense of psychological control of their world. And the fear is, if I lose control, what's going to happen? That's why a lot of people don't actually want to write all that stuff down in their head, because keeping it in your head gives you a false sense of control. Right? Why should I write it all down? Why should I unload all that stuff? Because it's bothering me enough as it is. Right? So it's the fear of losing control, the greatest human fear. That's why people procrastinate for the most part. They don't want to step into something they don't feel like they can control immediately, successfully, right on the beginning.
Yeah, well, like the antithesis of fear and control, which is what you're trying to get people to work towards, is trust and surrender, right? Like, if I can trust the system, then the mind can surrender and I can have relaxation. But most people are operating under the hormones of stress and fear and control. And what I see, and I had this experience and still do to this day. I mean, like, I remember back in the day when I was a loan originator, I'd be my task, just before I met you, my task would be to pound the phones and to try to get loans, right? And then all of a sudden I'd see the little red light blinking on my phone back in the day when I had a voicemail on my phone on the desk, or I'd hear the fax machine going off behind me on my credenza, and I would abort the money-making task that I was committed to doing over the next 45 minutes out of fear. Because my fear would be, oh, I just heard the alarm go off on my Outlook email. I wonder if that's an important email. Oh, I see the light blinking on my phone. Isn't that the latest and loudest, activity that you're talking about, like migrating to what's ever latest and loudest out of fear?
And these days, Tim, and probably for a lot of people listening to this or watching this, one of the biggest issues a lot of people are having these days is how many channels and streams of input they're getting. Slack, WhatsApp, email, yada, 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 on and on. And, the problem is most people don't realize how much time they say, I don't have time all day. I keep getting all this stuff. Yeah. Well, you're getting all that stuff. Do you need to get all that stuff? First question to answer. Why are you in that channel? Is that part of your life and your work? And it may be. Could be. A lot of people have, hey, we're on this team. This team is using Slack. We need to use that. Say, great. How long do you think it ultimately takes you in a day to scan all that stuff to find what are the actionable things in there that you can then pull out right then and stick where you need to keep track of it if there's an action you need to take? Less than an hour a day. But they think it's all day because they've just created this conflagration, I guess. I don't forget what the word is. They've created this monster, essentially, of all this stuff. But that's because they're not diligently dealing with this stuff when they see it, determining clearly what it is, what it means to them, keeping track of what it is. It doesn't actually take that much time to actually do that. You need a good hour a day anyway to deal with all the inputs that are coming in to then make the appropriate decision about clarifying and organizing anything that you need to, and then dumping the stuff you need to and filing the stuff you need to. Come on. That actually, even I don't care how much you're getting. And if you need to get all that stuff, fine, take 2 hours a day to do it, but it's not the whole day. You got the rest of the day to do it. But to your point, they don't relax. They think because it's coming in, I have to now look at it now. I have to think about it right now, whatever. All right, why don't you just wait to the end of the day? Nobody's going to die.
How often do you check your email?
Whenever I feel like it.
Say more about that.
What's more to say? Whenever I feel like it.
Well, but I mean, I'm sure there was a point in time you were more addicted to email than you are today, or no?
No, not really. I mean, addicted. That's the coolest things in my life have shown up through email. So it's like, why not? Let me look. What's up? And, keeping clear about things. And a lot of my work, and, because I've just worked virtually now, a lot of my work is through the email channel. So, sure.
Okay, so when you go check your email, walk us through like what that process looks like for you. You open up your email, you've got 12 black emails, right? Like ones that you haven't opened yet. Which, by the way, I also want you to speak to how many gray emails you have, which are the ones that you have opened and you left there, because I think you'll have an interesting answer for that. But how do you process those emails, and are there any gray emails in there? Could you go to that level?
Yeah, there's stuff I glance at. I do emergency scans all the time. Anything, any cool, fun things that would be quick. I can let my brain relax and look at some kitty playing with a rat. Those are fun. There's nothing wrong with letting your brain relax and just go, dork around with this silly stuff that may be showing up through all that. It's a great way to sometimes let your brain relax. Before you sit down and try to tackle the ugly one, that's going to take some thought and decision making about how to respond to this person in terms of what you're doing. But if I look, I'll just look at my email right now. I have 8 in there right now. So, pretty easy for me to look quick about which ones I could delete right away. And there's some that I'm probably going to get to today that might take a little writing or might take a little thinking about it. So as long as I don't have more than a screen full, I oftentimes just let them lie in there, just whatever, just work during the day, just whatever I feel like doing. So, rules are made when brains run out. So I go, do what you feel like doing. See, once you actually do this process, then you can start to trust your intuition about what you feel like doing. I feel like taking a nap. I did, right? Woke up and took a shower and talked to you, right? That's not on my list. There's all kinds of things I do that aren't on any of my list. I just do them because my list have kept track of all that. I look at all that and go, that'll wait. I'm gonna have a beer or take a nap. Or, here's a sort of creative thing. Let me go do. Or we have 2, cute little puppies that we have to take out for a walk whenever they need to do that. So none of that is an issue for me. Does that make sense?
It does. I think that most people are not in that orientation yet to, I'm going to do what I feel like doing. And I'm sure that there are people that are listening. They're saying, well, but that's nice for you, but my world isn't that way. I have things that are required of me to immediately be responded to.
Then they feel like doing that.
Say more.
If you truly have the guts to just go, I'm just going to do whatever I feel like doing, what you're going to feel like doing will change. So let me go feel like taking a nap or having a beer. And then you're going to go, yeah, but there's stuff in there I'm going to need to do for my work in order to do. Oh, then you feel like doing something about that. Yes, I do. That makes sense. I know this may sound like double talk, but it's not really. It's like, okay, maybe I feel like I need to put my shoulder to the wheel and grind through 95 emails right now so that I feel a little more comfortable. Great. That's what you feel like doing. That's what I would do.
So don't make that wrong. Don't make that wrong. In other words,
not at all. Well, live and learn. Again, emergency scanning. There's nothing wrong with that. See if there are any barns burning, or they're getting back to whether they are going to okay your huge contract or not. You're anxious to see whether that shows up. I might check that 6 times a day to see if that's coming in. So,
What about the people who, like, I never forget, I walked up behind one of my employees back 20 years ago, and I saw her computer screen, and she had like 1,034 emails in her inbox. And I almost had a seizure, like, because like I was like, oh my god, like my heart's palpitating right now. Like I might have, I don't know how many emails I have in my inbox right now, but it's less than 10 probably, and depending upon what came in since you and I have been on this Zoom experience. But like, what do you say to the person that is using their email as an organizing tool?
I just say, well, it's just a waste of your mental energy. Mental ecology says, why have a thought twice? Why do you need to rethink that email? See, if they got all that stuff in there, they're going to have to rethink all of them. How many times? Is that something I should do or not? And so I think as little as possible. My mind is for better stuff. So, all my systems and my systematic process have been set up. How can I not have to think about that more than once? So any kind of email that you leave in there, yeah, sometimes I'll glance at it two or three times during the day and say, should I deal with that one right now? No, I don't feel like it. Let me deal with that one right. That's fine. That's just making, tactical judgment calls kind of as the day moves on. I got different energy different times of the day, to do different things. So I give myself the freedom to sort of make that call just ad hoc, or as, as just as it shows up, just being present with what is there. But those people who've got those 1,300 emails is, I've spent thousands of hours coaching executives to what to do with all that. You could always create email bankruptcy and just hit Control A, Control X, and pray.
Well, I mean, like, let's be realistic about it. I mean, anybody that has several hundred emails in their inbox, I mean, they're not going to deal with all of them. I mean, they're just sitting there. It's like a pack rat.
Well, they haven't decided if it's reference, it should go to a reference folder. If it's trash, it should be trash. If there's some action you need to take on it, if you can do it in 2 minutes, you should do it right then.
Yeah, speak to the 2-minute rule. Go deeper on the 2-minute rule, please. That's an important one.
Yeah, well, once you decide the next step on something, if you can do it in 2 minutes or less, it would take you longer to organize it and look at it again. That would be to finish it right then. I've had a lot of executives tell me that was worth everything they paid me for the 2-minute rule. Change their life. Because how many things have a short, a lot of their emails are very short. Oh, I could shoot that to Jose right now. Boom. And they just avoid, first of all, they avoid making the next action decision. And if you haven't decided what the next action is, you don't know what takes 2 minutes or not. So just once you train yourself to think next action, then the 2-minute rule comes into play. But people say, gee, David, if I did that, I'd spend all my day doing 2-minute stuff. I go, no, you wouldn't. I don't have any 2-minute stuff. It's done. I have no backlog of 2-minute stuff. Why should you have a backlog? The whole point of 2 minutes is not to keep them in backlog. I see it like it's out of there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you don't implement anything from this system other than the 2-minute rule, you get massive leverage. So if it's like, what is it? It's an email. What's the next action? I need to read a spreadsheet. Can it be done in 2 minutes or less? Hell no. Okay, it needs to go into your system. But if it's an email that you can respond to in 2 minutes or less, respond and get closure to it, so you're not having this accumulation. And the same thing goes for voicemails and all that kind of stuff. But I think that I want you to speak to the subject matter of momentum for a minute. I don't know if you've ever explored that, but it's one of the things that I've thought a lot about is like that person who has 1,034 emails. They come into the office and they see that long list and they see that number. And I think that has a psychological impact that is very different than the psychological impact of implementing the 2-minute rule and actually knocking things off your list and getting momentum going and energy flowing in the direction of I get shit done. Do you have any?
It might be a silly metaphor or an example, but do anybody only take out part of their garbage? Wow, let me just find the really stinky parts of my garbage and throw that away. I'm going to leave the rest in there. It's like, what? You only empty some of your physical mailbox. Oh, that's not really that important. Let me just leave that in my mailbox. It's like, well, there's no difference but volume. Right? Why do you leave stuff in your input? in your inbox and email. And I understand people are using that because they don't have any better system they trust to keep track of stuff they need to be doing. But 1300, there's no way on God's green earth you can make any kind of strategic decisions about what you need to do out of that at any point in time.
Mm-hmm. Let's get a little tactical. So, for the listener, I mean, obviously, everybody needs to go read your book. That's a layup. I mean, anybody listening to this that hasn't read it, and if you read it, read it again. It's my advice, because I think that sometimes these types of things need to be revisited. And what we're talking about here isn't just like cool ideas. We're talking about life-changing information that can have a massive impact on the way you experience life. What are some, like, maybe 3 to 5 easy to implement? We just tackled one, the 2-minute rule. Asking yourself that question: what is it? Can it be done in 2 minutes or less? Getting rid of it if it can. What are a couple of other specific suggestions that you have that could be really helpful to people?
Write it down. Write it down. I'm sorry. Write it down. Pen, pad. No batteries, no Wi-Fi required. That's why this is on my desk always, because I might be talking to you and get an aha or make a commitment or something else, whatever. I'm going to jot something. I throw away 80% of that because I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but I want to not have my brain spinning with that as a potentially useful thing. So that's captured there. Right.
Now, write it down. Could be also done electronically, correct?
Of course, but electronically, with every click, all you ADHD people are going to not do it. How many clicks you have to do to get to a place to write it down on your phone? And some people are good with it. That's fine, as long as you empty that. And then, second tip is make sure that whatever you've written down, don't leave where you wrote it down or where you clicked it in to your phone. A lot of people's phones are just black holes. They've got stuff they've stuck all over God and creation in there, right? So you have to make sure that that's clean, just like your in basket needs to be clean. So yeah, you could just find. I have an app on my phone. A couple of friends of mine in Amsterdam built it. Great. It's just their app. If I put something in there, then it automatically sends it to my email, because I empty my email regularly. So I don't have to then look in my phone for where did I put that. It automatically sends it into a place that I automatically look. So, if you have the discipline, if you have the habit of making sure of capturing, and emptying and re-looking at what you captured and clarifying it, then organizing it if you need to. Great, nothing wrong with that.
What about people who have a thought? Oh shoot, I need to, I need to call this person, and then email themselves.
Great. Works fine. Works fine with me.
Just as long as you then take that email and don't have it be one of the 1,034 that are sitting in there, and process it into your system of, these are the calls that I need to make. So the next time you have free time to make calls, it's waiting for you, right?
Sure.
Okay, cool. What other tips do you have for us?
Next action decision making. That's, anybody listening or watching this, just pull out your to-do list and look at how many next actions specifically you have on that list. Most people have none. They've got mom, they've got bank, they've got tooth, they've got dog. Okay, you have a dog. Why'd you write it down? Oh yeah, we need to get some new dog food, or we need to see if we want to get a dog, or God knows. So there's, finish thinking, at least decide what's the next action on anything you've already written down. Or if you then start to implement our first tip, which is write stuff down, don't let it just lie there, just fallow. Then decide, what is that? Is that a good idea or not? I throw away, again, 80% of my ideas that I had because, maybe I had too much wine, and the next morning I wake up, that's a dumb idea, David. When you have the idea, you think it's brilliant because you had it.
Yes. Okay, so write it down. Next action. Next actions associated with anything that you've written down, so you can really assess what the scope is of the work associated with this idea.
Right. and have some sort of a list management tool. Now your
Say more about
calendar
that.
is a list already. And even if it's just a to-do list, fine, just do that. But again, once you kind of get the sophistication of what we're talking about here, most people have over 150 next actions, emails to send, stuff to buy at the store, stuff that you need to talk to your life partner about, you know, things you need to surf the web about, things, God knows, and as well as all the things you're waiting for. So, so having lists, but then creating those lists so that they're practical and functional. So you see the ones you need to see instead of having to look at 150 of them, all at one time. And then, fourth recommendation is review it regularly, keep it current.
And you suggest once a week at minimum, right?
Yeah, that's just rule of thumb. Sometimes I've had to do that weekly review every day. My life was crazy and all kinds of stuff was going on, and I had to regroup and recalibrate, on a more constant basis. And sometimes I don't need to do it every couple of weeks or 3 weeks. If life has been pretty slow and not much been going on, in order to kind of regroup. But yeah, once a week is a good habit to have. And, especially if you have a typical time and place that every time you sit down there, you move into this sort of review and just kind of move up into the fire tower instead of just hug the trees, and so that sort of a more elevated place that you can sit down and think about what's going on. To everybody listening or watching this, you and me too, over the last day or two or three, I've had stuff show up that you haven't had a chance to sit down and decide exactly what that means, what you're going to do about it, but you got to do something about it. But when are you going to do that kind of reflection and decision making and thinking? It doesn't happen by itself. This has to be a Starbucks hour on Saturday morning, or it has to be in your church pew in the Sunday night when you're listening to your kids sing in the choir. I don't know.
Or it could just
Whatever it
even
is.
be when you end your day, setting up the next day for success, right? Like, I mean, just taking 10 minutes at the end of the day to really evaluate what you want to accomplish tomorrow. So when you walk into the office tomorrow or to your home office or whatever, it's like you have your hit list. And I also think it's really important psychologically, like, to see your successes, right? Like, I mean, a lot of people don't, because they don't have the optics, because they don't have the system like the one that you're talking about and a dashboard associated with it. The day ends and their mental focus is on the 3 things that they didn't get done rather than the 9 things that they did. Do you have anything to say about that?
Sure. Yeah. No, I know a number of very sophisticated GTDers, people implementing my system. And what they do the night before is they glance through all of their lists, get a 3x5 card, and write the 3 things they want to do out of all that, so they don't have to look at their list the next day. All I do pretty much the night before is to look at what's coming up on my calendar for the next day, so I can see how long I can sleep. I'm a big sleep fan. I love sleep. You sleep as long as you can. And I see what the hard landscape is, which is that's all that's on my calendar is the stuff where I need to be when specifically in terms of commitments. And the rest of it, again, my weekly review is enough for me. But again, I'm at 77, my life has kind of slowed down a little bit in terms of volume of things and complexity of things. I still have some big projects. I have a new book in the works, and some big transitions in terms of our business that we're still watching and managing and so forth. So it's not like I'm doing nothing, but it's not as complex or fast or speedy as a lot of other people's are. So I think that a lot of that depends on how often do you need to review and how much do you need to review to feel comfortable about what you're doing. But to your point, yeah, good idea. But see, most people still have all that stuff in their head. So trying to make some decision about what they think the 3 most important things they need to do, if they haven't looked at the whole game, I wouldn't trust it.
Yeah. Your decision making process on what the 3 most important things are is going to oftentimes be skewed by whatever you feel the most pressure from, or the most fear around, or the most anxiety around, and it doesn't necessarily mean that's the most important thing. What are your rules about the calendar? You have any suggestions about how people manage their calendars?
Well, a lot of people are using their calendar for to-do lists, and then they don't make a distinction on the calendar between what has to happen that day versus what can slide if it has to. So they have to keep rethinking their calendar every time they look at it. I don't. Only thing on my calendar is time-specific agreements, appointments, day-specific things that I need to either do. Like that's the day that I need to make sure I send the UPS thing or the DHL thing, whatever. anytime that day is fine as long as I beat the closing. And then day specific information. Oh, that's Catherine's birthday. Or, oh, that's when they're going to shut down that street or that thing. So have to be careful about that. Or that's when this vacation thing is going to, that's when this holiday thing is going to go on. So don't try to talk to anybody in the U.S. on Labor Day, on the U.S. Labor Day anyway. So those are things that just I need to know. So those are three things: time specific, day specific commitment, and day specific information. And then the calendar is very pristine. That's all that goes on there. All my other actions to do in and around my calendar are on my other lists because they don't have to be rewritten.
Do you meditate?
Yeah.
How long have you been meditating for?
Well, I did a little bit of it when I was getting a black belt in karate, just in terms of martial arts kind of meditation. And that was quiet the mind stuff. Focus on your breathing, quiet your mind, sit in a meditative, reflective kind of state. And that was, God, that's got to be 50 years ago, 55 years ago. I started doing that. Then when my DR, my spiritual coach, I'd been and studied a lot of other things. So, hung out met him in 1971, and since then I've been doing, quite a rigorous spiritual exercise, which is not a passive meditation. It's actually a very active process.
How many
looks like meditation.
How many minutes a day do you do your practice?
Beats me. For years I would do an hour or 2 hours or whatever. Now I just live that. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I stop at night. I used to do a reflective process. It might take half an hour, whatever.
Mm-hmm. And I think I have a sense of what the answer is, but why do you meditate? What do you find to be the benefits of meditation?
Well, the universe is always on. Which is what part of the universe do you want to pay attention to? Right. So if you don't stop the world, close your eyes, and sort of turn off the external inputs, there's a whole lot of the universe you're not going to be able to hear. Right. So again, the universe is always on. And, I got a lot of help from, the spiritual side of my life and the spiritual world that's available there, but only if I ask and only if I stop and listen. Ask and listen. Pretty much all you need to do.
Yeah, so I kind of refer to that, my choice of words on that is downloads. I find that I just download information and have some incredibly impactful and aware moments when I quiet my mind down. Just like stuff just drops in, and I'll just see things more clearly, or I might have a brilliant idea, or may just even have some awareness around some of my suffering, some of my repetitive thought patterns and things like that. I don't know if you know this. You know that I graduated from USM, right? Did I ever tell you that?
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. So I've actually going to have Ron Holnick on the show here fairly soon too, which I'm super excited.
Tell him hello. Yeah, Ron and Mary, old friends I've known for many years. Yeah.
Yeah, they are amazing souls. They've gifted a lot of people their wisdom over the years, and I'm one of those people, as are my two partners, Scott and Julie. Yeah, I think the reason I asked a question about meditation, David, is because it strikes me that so much of what you're talking about is a meditation. Getting things done.
Well, life is a meditation. What's the difference, really? I mean, the difference is how much of your external material world do you want to be meditating within? How much do you want to your point, stop that and listen on to a more subtle level? But as I say, the universe is always on, and you're here. You decided to take on the body and to show up here. So nothing wrong with being involved in this experience. You just need to make sure that you lighten up about it. And meditation is one of the best ways to lighten up about it.
I think there's a big misunderstanding about meditation, right? It's like, I hear this from clients all the time. They're like, I've tried to meditate, but man, I can't get my mind to stop thinking. It's just, I'm like, that's not really the goal. Like, if it happens as a result, great, but that's not the goal. The goal is presence, right? With what is.
Sure. So, well, people say that like, well, there's sort of the Zen approach. Just enjoy the strangeness of your mind. Mm-hmm. See where it goes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
Um,
in most all the spiritual practices of all the various esoteric uh, things, as best that when I was researching all this in the 70s, the first challenge and the first discipline is observation. Whether you read Gurdjieff or Uspensky or Ledbetter or any of the Theosophists or whatever, first thing is observe. Just stop and just watch, listen, just observe. You don't have to go any further than that. If you can't do that, then you can't move on to sort of the next level of subtleties about it. But it's really just observation.
yeah. Well,
Like,
I guess the word meditate really means to know thyself, right? So like it's to be the observing presence of the mind's activities. I mean, you can learn a whole hell of a lot about your fears, about your habitual thought patterns, about what's taking you
yeah,
off your path, right?
sure. Well, who's having those thoughts?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the consciousness that's having the thoughts, right?
Sure.
Yeah. What's next for David Allen? You said you're writing a book. What's that book going to be about?
Getting things done and teams. Over all these years, Tim, people have said, "God, I got this. How come, how can I get people around me to get this? Life would be so much easier if my kids got this, if my spouse got this, if my team got this, or whatever." And so I've never really had a good answer for that. And so I'm co-authoring with our partner in the UK, and he's got a lot of miles on his tires of working with teams within the GTD context, senior teams and so forth, and the, to what degree the GTD principles applied in the group context. It's like, how do you work effectively with other people? Because so you could be clear, Tim, about what your life and work. I could be clear about my life and my work. But if you and I make some agreement to have something, we're going to do something together, we've just increased the complexity exponentially of managing our agreements. What's your role? What's my role? What are so there's a lot more complexity that shows up in terms of the application. It's still the same principle. What has our attention as partners right now? Right? What what are we going to do about those? What are the projects that we need to clarify? What are the outcomes that we need to agree on, that we need to come up with? Right. So it's all just GPD stuff. And so, if you've taught people around you to do GPD, the more they've done this, the easier life has been in terms of your relationships with them. And so it's a necessary manual to get out.
Oh,
So
I would agree. We get asked a lot to coach teams, and one of the things that we've observed is that um, teams without rules create a lot of chaos, and without structure create a lot of chaos. Meaning, there's a lot of reacting that's happening on teams because they don't have some ground rules that they're playing by, where they're not like interrupting each other midstream of their work and all of that. So the adaptation of the GTD methodology, I think, could be incredibly powerful. That's exciting to hear that you're
sure,
doing that.
especially with the natural planning model. I mean, the natural planning model is probably the most unheralded part of getting things done, and yet it's one of the most powerful. Once people really get that
I don't
natural
think I
planning
even know
model,
that. What is that? What is the natural planning model?
go back to chapter 3. You'll see it.
Okay. Okay.
It's like it's the stages we naturally go through when the way you get out the door, the way you get dressed. You have a purpose. You have a vision of what it looks like when it's done. You then brainstorm all the potentially relevant things that you need to consider, and then you need to organize those into some sort of format, sequentially or components. Then you need to take next actions on the moving part. There's a big duh, but most people don't do that. So what you were talking about is, it's purpose and principle. Those are the drivers. You know, how do we engage together? What are our agreements about how we play? So purpose and what's the purpose of the team? If you don't know the purpose of the team, you're not going to have any answers for the rest of it.
Thanks for listening to today's show. And before we wrap, I want to remind you about the Complete Referral Partner Success System, a step-by-step process with over 3 hours of scripted videos that teach you exactly how to go about cultivating new referral partner relationships that will significantly increase your leads and grow your business for the long term. Learn the secrets used by top producers. Many of them are my coaching clients, and the strategies that I use successfully as an originator myself. You're going to learn how to nail the first meeting, that precious and important meeting that you have with that potential referral partner for the first time. You're going to learn how to cross-sell every listing agent on the transaction, and you're going to discover how to stop selling and start connecting and start building long-term relationships. There are over 20 powerful scripts educating you on exactly what to say, provided both in video and written transcripts. And for podcast listeners, we have a special offer. For a limited time, you get 50% off. Normally, RPSS is $899, and to podcast listeners, it's only $449.50. Use the link in the podcast description for more information and get your 50% off discount, or go to www.performance-experts.com. I hope you enjoyed today's show, and we look forward to future episodes that educate you and help you in the growth of your business. Yeah. So like what's your, like, you have a team and you guys work remotely just like my team does as well. It's like, do you have a situation where like where team members are constantly causing others to react? I think also it goes back to fear. Like, oh, I have this thought. I wonder what's going on with this situation. Oh, I think I'll just infiltrate my partner's day by calling them or texting them or emailing them. I mean, those are the things that I feel like really bring things to a screeching halt. Like, is that what you see, and how do you guys deal with that?
Well, we implemented holacracy 10 years ago, so we have very clear roles. We know who's responsible for what, so we don't have those issues. You know, if things have to be dealt with immediately, that's the exception, not the rule.
But you guys have to communicate with each other. So are there any
Sure.
specific rules around communication? Like,
No, we have no rules about it. Whenever somebody thinks, hey, we all need to talk about it, then great, set up a Zoom call and we will.
Mm-hmm. But that's even that, like, is like, that's an important distinction, right? Like, I mean, man, I get irritated when I get a long email from somebody that takes me, 7 minutes to read and then 15 minutes to respond to. It's like, can we just get on the phone and talk? I mean, isn't that more efficient? I mean, I think that's a lost art in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think having regular, for those that are listening that have this situation where you feel like, wow, what Tim said there and what David said is my world, where I'm being interrupted a lot and all that. To me, that means you're just not having enough proactive meetings. Like, if there's this consistent interruption of people's hair being on fire and they need each other for something, maybe crank up the frequency of the meetings. They don't have to be long, but if you know that you have that regular check-in, then whatever's screaming at you latest and loudest won't take control as fully.
Yeah, but you have to be careful. What you don't want is agendas between two people to take up 6 people's time.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. If somebody's wondering why the hell they're in this meeting, that's not a good thing. Yes. You got to be super mindful of who you're inviting to the meeting, whether it's necessary for them.
What's the purpose of the meeting, and the people that are there, what roles are they fulfilling by being in that meeting?
Yeah. Well said. Yeah. Yeah. That's powerful. And that, I think people are just so geared towards just firing off emails and inviting everyone, right? When they haven't really just taken pause for a minute and said, okay, who really needs to be here? What's the purpose of the meeting, and what role will each attendee play in being there?
Right. And how long does a meeting need to be? A lot of people just knee jerk in Outlook or whatever, 30-minute or 1 hour meetings, and go, yeah, but what the purpose of the meeting, you might need a 90-minute meeting, or you might only need a 15-minute meeting. So just being conscious about what's the purpose, what do we want to accomplish in what period of time, who needs to be there in what roles. That sounds like a lot of thinking, but once you get used to thinking that way, then it just becomes, standard operating procedure.
Yeah, I think that's such a like an all-encompassing statement. That's what I said at the beginning. I really encourage everyone to adopt what David's teaching and to give it whatever amount of time you need to give it for it to become a new habit. Because I mean, I think that that's the thing is I think people quit too soon because, oh, this doesn't work for me, or I'm not seeing the benefits. It's like we're talking about a different way of doing life, aren't we? I mean, in a lot of ways.
Can be. A lot of people are, I mean, it's funny, Tim, everybody's already doing some of all of this. So it's not like this is some new foreign language or some new technology. Everything we've been talking about is common sense, easily available to be done, in terms of the skill to do it. But knowing when to do it, the way to do it, and then making that a habitual way to operate, that's another story.
Well, before we conclude, I want to ask you a question that I like to ask people. So if you could take and turn the clock back and talk to your 18-year-old self, what advice would you give to him knowing what you know now at 77 years old or almost 77?
Yeah. I'd say relax and trust your intuition. I didn't have a concept of intuition and trusting sort of the inner small voice that we all have until in my 20s, that I started to uncover that. I started to do, my research and spiritual work and all that other stuff, and sort of learning to pay attention and to trust the inner voice and relax. Those are things I could have done more of.
That's such a beautiful answer and speaks so much to, I would imagine, the origins of you developing what you've developed and helped so many people with, because that intuition can't be accessed if you're operating off of a over maxed out, stressed out mind. You can't hear anything else other than the mind clutter, right? Yeah. It's
there. That still small voice is in everybody. You just have to be willing to stop and listen, pay attention, and take its advice.
Yeah. Well, my friend, thank you. Hey, I wanted to ask you, how many bicycles do you own since you live in Amsterdam?
2. We have kind of our work bike, which has room for our little Cavalier spaniels that can sit in the front basket, and we can get a bunch of groceries and whatever. And we just got Brompton, the folding bike, but then I have they now have an electronic version of that. So we have Bromptons, so we can fold them if we want to, stick them on the train, go somewhere, unpack them, put the battery in, and take off and explore. So.
Yeah, I'll never forget the first time I went to Amsterdam. I was driving from the airport to my hotel, and we passed this huge 4-story parking garage, and it was filled with bikes. It was a parking garage for bikes. I'm like, what? Well,
there are more bikes than people in the Netherlands.
It's such a beautiful thing, it's great for you to be able to get that kind of exercise, to be outdoors.
No, we haven't had a car in 8 years. We've been here.
Oh, wow. How cool. How cool. Well, I'm super happy for you that you have found a beautiful place to live, and my second home is waiting for you. So when you and your team, or just you and Kathleen, are ready to go to Costa Rica, know that I'm your guy. I'm going to take care of a lot of arrangements for you if you need it. And such a nice opportunity to chat with you, David. Thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure, Tim. This was fun. Yeah, hopefully people got some value out of all this.
Oh, I'm sure that they did. Sure that they did. And good luck with the book. I think that's really exciting that you're doing that for teams. And I know that I'll have a lot of clients who will want to read that book as soon as it's ready.
Yay, super. I'll let you know.
Okay, buddy. Great to see you. Thank you so much.
Ciao, Tim.
Bye-bye.